The Three Pillars of Jujutsu by Briston, Lowry. Jujutsu is the art of redirecting force, or simply getting out of its way. Ju meaning gentle or supple, and Jutsu meaning art or skill. Throughout Japan's history, other terms have been used to describe the art, such as Yawara Jutsu, Taijutsu, Aiki Jujutsu, etc. Many spelling variations exist. There are also descendant arts such as Judo, Gracie Jujutsu, and Aikido. In an effort to eliminate confusion, I will be referring to them all as Jujutsu. The following text will delve into the three principles of Jujutsu. These principles can be applied to any martial art. However, since my area of expertise is in the art of Jujutsu, I will speak only of Jujutsu and its application and merit. The three principles or pillars of Jujutsu as I see it are that of water, stone, and mind. To be a complete Jujutsuka, you must have all three pillars and keep them in balance with one another. Much of what I'm about to write has been said before by others, I am sure. These are simply my observations and my thoughts on the subject. I do not claim to be original in any way. The pillar of stone is the principle of pressure. Naturally, this is the first principle you learn in Jujutsu. Pressure is what separates martial theory from martial fact. The theory of movement must be put to the test by an unwilling opponent. This is the science of Jujutsu. What is useless or less economic is replaced by what is useful or more economic. This is an old concept. Jigoro Kano sensei famously pressure tested his students in his style of Jujutsu he called Judo. Compared to other systems of Jujutsu at the time, Judo placed more of an emphasis on randori, or free sparring. In 1886, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department held a tournament between Judo and Jujutsu to see which style was better. There were 15 matches held, to which Kano's students won 13 and fought to a draw on the other two. The results spoke for themselves. I would argue that it was pressure testing that set Jigoro Kano's school apart. If you believe that it was Sensei Kano's genius alone that led to the development of more economic techniques, I would simply ask you this. In what way were these techniques found to be more economic, if not through pressure testing? It has been my experience that randori is the greatest teacher. Please do not misunderstand me. I owe an enormous debt to my teachers, for without their patient guidance, I would never have had the tools to grasp the concept of Ju. I liken learning Jujutsu to learning a foreign language. When learning a foreign language, you must first study under an instructor. Your instructor will give you the basic vocabulary and grammar to effectively speak. If your experience with that language is only limited to the classroom, you will never fully develop. However, if after having studied diligently in the classroom, you travel abroad to the country in which that language is spoken, you will find that your understanding of that language increases greatly. Furthermore, if you stay in that country for a period of 10 or more years, you will begin to dream in that language, and you'll be capable of writing poetry. None of this would have been possible without your instructor. Jujutsu is like this. Your instructor teaches you the movements and concepts. This is your vocabulary and grammar. You, as a good student, diligently practice them in great repetition. Then you practice randori or compete with an advanced practitioner. This is like the spontaneity of conversation with a native speaker. When pressure testing your Jujutsu practice, it is incredibly important to address any blind spots in your training. After all, it is the rules that define your art. If you only practice randori without periodically incorporating striking, you will develop techniques that may not be appropriate in actual combat. For example, there are many specialty guards in Jujutsu today, most of which would not be utilized if your opponent is permitted to punch you in the face. One could conclude that the more liberal the rule set you use when practicing randori, the more effective your jujutsu will be. To a point, you would be correct. Paradoxically, however, if you allow everything in your randori practice, there are skill sets that will never fully develop, so it is up to the teacher to find balance. The teacher must balance safety with realism. If you simply treat each randori session as a life and death matter, you will only collect permanent injuries and never be able to train long enough to master jujutsu. Furthermore, if you have not balanced stone with water, your randori will become stagnant and only take you so far. If you compare randori to a conversation in a foreign language, having stone without water is like a screaming contest and not a conversation at all. Your grasp of the foreign language does not improve by simply speaking louder than the native speaker, nor will the native speaker's ability to understand you increase. The pillar of water. The pillar of water is the principle of flow. If the pillar of stone is the science of jujutsu, the pillar of water is the art of jujutsu. The principle of flow is the practice of randori in a non-competitive or cooperative manner. Simply put, to flow is to yield. Flow does not insist. Flow is without ego. This concept can be the most challenging to accept by an advanced jujutsuka. After all, at the advanced level, the student understands that it is pressure testing that has carried him to this point. So how can it be that cooperative randori will improve the jujutsuka's art? If all your practice is stone, there is nuance that will never be revealed to you. You will miss the finer points of balance associated with a movement. Your timing will never be what it could. Most importantly, you will only sharpen techniques that you are already good at. Flow gives you the opportunity to practice randori in an unfamiliar territory. Flow also allows the jujutsuka to spontaneously create movement. For example, I've personally invented multiple submission escapes while practicing flow. Returning to the foreign language example, flow is what allows the language student to compose poetry. I first learned to flow at brown belt. I had already practiced jujutsu for a decade. I was never told how to conduct myself during randori. I had to come to the principle of flow on my own. My primary training partner understood this and patiently waited for me to believe flow training was my idea. After many grueling sessions with him dominating me, I began to reflect on his energy. At the beginning of each session, he would simply yield until I began to insist. Once I would start to insist on my movements, he would respond like a mirror. He would open the door to the pillar of water at the beginning of each randori session, and when I responded with the pillar of stone, he would crush me. I was not improving. I had reached my physical limitations, and I knew it. I outweighed him by nearly 30 pounds. It was clear to me that he knew something I did not. When I finally accepted that fact and allowed myself to part with my ego, I tried something new. Our next randori session began, and I simply reflected his energy. He was supple and did not insist, so I too remained supple. We were cooperating with one another, chaining attacks and escapes in no particular order. It was like two musicians playing off of one another. I lost myself in the art of it, and before I knew it, nearly an hour had passed. Upon completion, he stated, "That is how you get better." He was correct, both in method and application. That moment had a profound impact on my life. I would later know this to be my first Zen experience. My main training partner in those days was Matt Huang. He was Tim Cartmell's highest ranking student and first black belt. If it was my instructors who gave me the tools to become a black belt, it was Matt Huang who showed me how to become an artist. Like the pillar of stone, you cannot practice the pillar of water solely. By only practicing the pillar of water, you lose martial context. The tendency is to go too far down the rabbit hole and lose martial effectiveness. To find an example of this, you need only look at our cousin art, Aiki Jujutsu. At some point in history, the emphasis in Aiki Jujutsu changed from martial effectiveness to personal development. Thus, Aiki Jujutsu gave way to Aikido. Except for Tomiki Aikido and a handful of other offshoots, today's Aikidoka only practice Randori cooperatively. They do not pressure test their art, and because of this, I believe many Aikido dojos have lost something important. Please do not misunderstand me. I have great respect for Aikido as an art form. Expert Aikidoka are masters of the pillar of water and mind. As a martial art, however, it lacks the pillar of stone. The pillar of mind. The pillar of mind is the principle of self-reflection and the warrior's mindset. The pillar of mind is what keeps everything in balance. Through meditation and self-reflection, the art of Jujutsu can become an instrument of mental and spiritual development. To better explain this, I will quote Otake Sensei. Bushido, without the spirit of humility, is nothing more than violence. Many Jujutsuka today lack the pillar of mind. True, they have the warrior's mindset. However, they lack the self-reflection aspect that gives them humility. They march around with so much bravado, having forgotten what it was like when they knew nothing of the art. Practitioners such as this are not martial artists. They are simply fighters. Self-reflection leads to humility, and humility is what allows the Jujutsuka to apply the lessons he learned in Jujutsu to his daily life. For example, in your day-to-day dealings with others, it is possible to remain supple and redirect negative behavior. You may also apply your Jujutsu lessons when problem solving. When you meet with an obstacle in Jujutsu, you take the path of least resistance. In other words, you do not meet force with force, because it is not always appropriate to meet a problem head-on. Often doing so will yield negative and unintended results. If someone is blocking your path through a doorway, shoving them aside will likely lead to unpleasantries. However, if you ask him to move politely, the chances are he will do so. If he does not move, perhaps there's another way around. This requires you to suspend your ego. For this to be possible, you must first learn to examine your own behavior with honest eyes. I am reminded of the first time I learned the principle of flow. In order for me to become capable of flow, I had to examine my own behavior and admit to myself what I was doing was not working. In other words, I had to change before my Jujutsu Randori could change. It was only after this that I broke through the plateau of my progression and reached heights I never truly thought were personally possible. I often tell my students they must pass 2 tests to have the mental stamina to remain in Jujutsu. The first test is the ego test, and it is a test that will be repeated throughout your time in Jujutsu. For example, your first day of Jujutsu is often an eye-opening experience. You are dominated by everyone on the mat. Even smaller jujutsuka get the better of you, and that can be very humbling. For many students, the blow to their ego is too great, and you never see them again, while other students may understand that it is a skill and are willing to suffer to learn. Even still, for the latter student, ego can creep its way back into his mind with the progression of his skills and attainment of higher rank. This is an obstacle for the jujutsuka in many ways. With ego comes expectations that are difficult to live up to. Ego can prevent you from taking risks that would otherwise be a fruitful goal, such as competition. Most importantly, ego will likely prevent you from discovering the pillar of water. The second test is the injury test. This test will measure your devotion and perseverance. It is devotion and perseverance that make up the warrior's mindset. A Japanese Zen proverb sums up the warrior's mindset perfectly. Fall 7 times, rise 8 times. Unfortunately, it is not a matter of if, but of when you get injured in training. When dealing with the pillar of stone, injury is always nearby. Many people get injured and stop training altogether. I've seen this too many times to count. However, I've seen students get egregiously injured in competition, only to rise again with greater understanding and devotion. This kind of perseverance inspires all who see it. I believe students of the art are called to Jujutsu because they are on the warrior's path. As a teacher, it is my responsibility to guide those along that path who already possess good character. I used to believe that Jujutsu will teach good character, and to a point that is true. However, in order to improve one's character, you must first be capable of self-reflection. How can you address problems of self if you cannot even look at yourself with honest eyes? I do not want to train fighters who are not capable of discovering the pillar of mind. I wish to train martial artists. There are far too many jujutsuka today who only have the pillar of stone. For these fighters, Jujutsu is only a physical endeavor. As such, it has been relegated to the world of sport. Pure Jujutsu is truth, and truth does not change. You yourself must change in order to become a fully realized Jujutsuka. Jujutsu does not yield her secrets easily. She demands patience, devotion, a supple mind, and continuous self-reflection. In an effort to better your character and strengthen your pillar of mind, one should practice Zen meditation or Zazen. This is nothing new. The same samurai who birthed the art of Jujutsu practiced Zazen daily. I came to Zen to calm my mind, break free from negative thought patterns, and acquire a little more inner peace. I have found that Zen perfectly complements my Jujutsu practice and has allowed me to gain a deeper understanding of Jujutsu. Zen is like Jujutsu in that it is a long and yet fruitful journey requiring much discipline. True Jujutsu is simple, and the Zen mind seeks simplicity. I will never fully acquire inner peace. However, in the short time that I have practiced Zen in tandem with my Jujutsu, I have found a measure of peace. It is likely that I will never be able to fully suspend my ego. Yet, like the Enzo circle that fails to be perfect, it is beautiful in its imperfections. I will remind myself daily that it is progress that must be measured and not perfection. I will be content with perfect intent, no matter how many times I fail to have perfect application inside or outside the dojo.